Alright, shalom. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. Alright, let's do this so we can have some assurance of where our ancestors, when they come back from Babylon, where they settled at, and that they never had control of the Philistines' territory or Edom's territory, and how the prophet Obadiah made a prophecy of where we'll settle after our captivity, the captivity that, we are in now because we never settled these lands, and that how the tribe of Judah or the Israelites that was taken to Babylon during the Babylonian captivity never fulfilled this prophecy of Prophet Obadiah or where we should settle. So this is a prophecy that's coming up now, and that we gonna bring to fruition when we bring this when Almighty Yah bring this captivity to an end. And that you can look in the Tanakh and see that the Israelites never settled these parts. We never had control of Edom's territory after we broke the covenant and were kicked out the land. And that how the exiles, when they come back from Babylon, that they didn't settle and control Edom's territory, and how that they was only confined to Judah's little inheritance and basically close around Jerusalem. That was the only lands that we control. So let's check this out. Look, all right, we know in Ezra, that where the Israelites settled, and these are the children of the prophets that went up out of captivity, of those which had been carried away from Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon, had carried away unto Babylon, and come again unto Jerusalem and Judah, everyone unto his cities, and then they go on to, explain, and that, even the men of Bethel, in the northern kingdom, they was, part of the captivity. And I explained in plenty of videos how it wasn't no 10 lost tribes. And then if you look in Ezra and Nehemiah history, you'll see that the Israelites, from the northern kingdom was a part of the Babylonian captivity. It's just that they didn't settle their inheritance no more. It was over with. So you only get names of individuals and of some of the areas that they lived in, and Bethel was one of them. And that how that they didn't go back to the northern parts, and how everybody was confined to Judah's inheritance in little certain parts of Benjamin, but that how we never had control of any of our heritage outside of that, and then if you go to Nehemiah, it explained it also. Look, the officers of the people settled in Jerusalem. The rest of the people cast lots for 1 of 10 to come and settle in the holy city of Jerusalem, and the other 9 tents to stay in the towns. The people gave their blessings to all the men who willingly settled in Jerusalem. These are the heads of the province who lived in Jerusalem. In the countryside of Judah, the people lived in their towns, each one on his own property. Israelites, priests, Levites, and temple servants, and the sons of Solomon's servants. While in Jerusalem, some of the Judites and some of the Benjamites lived. So we didn't live in any other parts besides, that little territory, in Judah and around Jerusalem and so forth, So, that's like right there that we only live, man, in these parts, Look, you see Jerusalem and around about there, and that how we never had control of Edom's territory, and that we never whooped Edom after breaking the covenant and being exiled from the land and coming back. So that never happened, and we only lived in a little part. And then I show you what happened to the exiles, that their lights went out so fast. So the prophet prophecies of Obadiah are yet meant to be fulfilled. You know, they are yet to be fulfilled. So let's go to all right, let's go to Obadiah, and then let's look at some of these prophecies. You know, all right, let's go to Prophet Obadiah's time, and then how we never fulfilled those prophecies. You know, so that's a prophecy's got to be fulfilled. You know, these prophecies got to be fulfilled. There's no way around it, and how that they have to come to pass. You know, that when we was kicked out the land, that during the Babylonian wars, and that how when we come back, that we never got a chance to fulfill these prophecies. And then, you know, as you read, man, the book of Obadiah, as you read the book of Obadiah, you know, Obadiah, the vision of Obadiah, this said, the Elohim Yah concerning Edom, we have heard a rumor from the Elohim and ambassadors and sent among the heathen. Arise ye and let us rise up against her in battle. And then what he basically do, I mean, he goes about to condemn Edom. You know, Edom is condemned, and then it says what we, you know, supposed to do to Edom, and then how that we supposed to get Edom's territory. And then I show in Tanakh how that was never fulfilled. You know, that was never fulfilled. You know, that we never had control of Edom's territory after breaking the covenant. You know, that ain't never happened. And that how the Israelites were only, you know, confined to Jerusalem. You know, we was only confined to Jerusalem. Alright? You know, when you read Obadiah, and he goes hard on Edom. We have received tidings from the Elohim, and the envoy has been sent out among the nations. Up, let us rise up against her in battle. This said, my Elohim Yah concerning Edom, I will make you least among nations. You shall be most despised. Your arrogant heart has seduced you, and you who dwell in the cliffs of the rocks, in your lofty abode, you think in your heart, who can pull me down to earth? Should you nest as high as the eagle? Should your eyrie be lodged among the stars? Even from there I will pull you down, declares the Elohim. So what he basically saying, ain't no escape for Edom. He can be on another planet that Almighty Yah gonna bring judgment to him. If these were to come to you, marauders by night, they would steal no more than they need. If vanagers come to you, they would surely leave you some gleaning. How utterly you are despised, how thoroughly raffled is Edom, who ransacked his hoardings. All your allies turned you back. At the frontier, your own confederates have duped and overcome you. Those who ate your bread have planted snares under you. He is bereft of understanding in that day. I will make the wise vanish from Edom, understanding from Esau's mount. Your warriors shall lose their heart, O Teman, and men and not a man on Esau's mount shall survive the slaughter. For the outrage to your brother Jacob, disgrace shall engulf you, and you shall perish forever. On that day when you stood aloof, when aliens carried off his goods, when foreigners entered his gate and cast lots for Jerusalem, you were as one of them. How could you gaze with glee on your brother that day, on his day of calamity? And how could you gloat over the people of Judah on that day of ruin? How could you abide? How could you loudly jeer on a day of anguish? How could you enter into the gate of my people on its day of disaster? Gaze in glee with others on its misfortune. You know, that's what Edom did. Edom helped our enemies get control of our land, and Edom settled in our land and so forth. And man, Edom been there ever since. So it's basically all the people that is not of Japhet is going to be Edom that's in the promised land. And a lot of you Israelites get the Edomites confused and call them the Caucasians and so forth and say that they are the Edomites, and you overlook the real Edomites and so forth. And that's going to be a stumbling block for a whole lot of you Israelites when we come to settle our land, because if you ain't got no understanding of who Edom are, you don't need to come back to the promised land, because you won't be doing nothing but causing troubles and so forth. And then how we don't have no beef with Japhet tribes, even though they was the ones that ran us out during the Babylonian wars. They was called by Almighty Yah, meant to chase us out. But he never told Edom to settle in our land and get control of our heritage. On its day of disaster, gaze and glee with others on its misfortune, on its day of disaster, and lay hands on its wealth. On its day of disaster, how could you stand at the pass to cut down its fugitives? How could you betray those who fled? On that day of angers, as you did, so shall it be done to you. Your conduct shall be requited. Against all nations, the day of the Elohim is at hand. That same cup that you drank on my holy mount shall all nations drink evermore. Drink till their speech grows thick, and they become as though they had never been. But on Zion's mount a remnant shall survive, and it shall be holy. The house of Jacob shall dispossess those who dispossess them. The house of Jacob shall be fire, and the house of Joseph flame, and the house of Esau shall be straw. They shall burn it and devour it, and no survivors shall be left of the house of Esau. For the Elohim has spoken. This they shall possess the Neg and Mount Esau, as well as the Seplah and Philistia. Now, let's look at some of this on the map. Alright, that's Philistia. So, we know that we got to settle them parts, and look what's there. Look what's there. You Israelites can't change that. I know some of y'all feel bad and feel terrible. Now, we ain't gonna settle there, and that's their land. Well, you're gonna be going up against Almighty Yah if you don't settle in these parts. I told y'all, and I done showed you in Tanakh history, how we never had control of our enemies' land. The exiles didn't, and that how that they only lived in a little small percentage of Judah's territory. That we didn't have control of Edom's territory when the exiles come back. And we know that when we lived on the land, that we didn't take control of these folks' land because Edom hadn't helped our enemies destroy us yet, and that only came about during the Babylonian War. So you see here, look, you see that coastline. You see that coastline, and you see Philistia. You see what I'm saying? Now, let's look at some more of these. Alright, Philistia, right there. We got to settle there because we know the Tanakh mentioned that's where we got to settle, and y'all can't make this into some other lands. Some Israelites will try to say, Africa, the promised land is on the Africa plateau, but we were separated from the Hamite lands when we was given these parts, and they was no longer considered Hamite lands. So one Israelite, got mad and said, they was in Africa. No, we went into Africa during the Babylonian wars, and how our lands that we settled was Shem's land when the Creator gave them to us. When we come out of Egypt, that they was no longer the Canaanite lands, and how this is Shem's land. Alright, but you see Philistia, what the prophet Obadiah say. Let's look at some more of this. Look. See, we know we got to settle there, and y'all see that name right there, so don't get upset and get sick at the stomach because what's happening to them folks right there, and that it's Almighty's Yah will that we don't have to go up against all them folks what's happening to them, because we don't make anything. We don't make anything. We don't make spoons or forks. Meaning captivity. How in the world we gonna come home, meaning get rid of them folks and settle our land if they all there by the millions, and then we come there with nothing. Us just talking and jumping up and down ain't gonna make them folks move. It'll make them folks get us. So Almighty Yah is clearing the way now. He's clearing the way now, and ain't nothing you Israelites can do about it. You can cry, whine, and moan all you want to, but you're not going to be able to change prophecy. You can feel sad and feel disheartened and all. No, we're not going to settle these parts and be feeling real terrible, man, about them folks and what's going on, but you're not going to be able to change it. You're not going to be able to change it, and you're not going to be able to put our inheritance somewhere else. It's going to have to be just like Tanakh say. So some of you going to feel sick and weak at the knees and all kind of stuff, but it's not going to change what we got to settle at. It's not going to change it. So you might as well get your heart ready. You might as well get your heart ready, because you're not finna change Tanakh history by how you feel, and there's no misunderstanding about this. It's clear, it's plain as day. Now, look here, you see that Philistine, and then you see what's on there. You see what's on there. We got to get in the ruins. Them folks come there during the Babylonian wars and after, and all them folks settled in our land, and that how the whole promised land supposed to be ours, but because we broke the covenant, that we only get a little small percentage of our land, and we should be happy. And then Almighty Yah making ways that we don't have to run all them folks out, and that they being ran out and being, taken care of now. So some of you Israelites gonna be feeling sick and sad and everything, but when we get in our heritage and get settled, we don't need your kind around. And when we heading towards the settlement, we don't need your kind around. It's gonna be crying and moaning about where we got to settle, feeling sad for some folks that don't feel sad about us. Cause if we got there and we was talking about getting these parts and we don't have no assistance, them folks will get us without no thinking about it, because they think that the land is theirs. They think the land is theirs, and there's no compromising the Tanakh history. It's no compromising the Tanakh history. So, it is what it is. We are landless people, and we don't have no sovereignty, and Almighty Yah gonna put us to the test when we come home, when it come time to settlement, and those who don't have heart to move them folks out of our land, when we get there, the heritage that is allotted us in the Tanakh, then you don't need to come back, and you need to be over here in captivity forever, and you don't never need to touch our land. All right, look, you see the whole Philistine, that's ours. That's ours. All right, and then it say that we will settle in the Mount of Edom. Now, you see right here, wherever Edom had, you know what I'm saying, we got to take all this back. It's basically, we're going to be living in the South. When you boil it all down to it, that we're going to be living in the South. And that some of those Edomites, man, they got control of Jerusalem. Ain't no, them folks got a name change. And a lot of Israelites are confused about the name change that the so-called Palestinians got, and that some of them, man, they Edomites. We can't change that, and you're not going to be able to change it, and we have to settle in these parts. Let's read this about Edom. All right, so it says that we'll settle on Mount Edom. All right, and shall all nations. All right, we know that we're gonna burn them, and this they shall possess the Neg and the Mount of Esau, as well as the Sepulchre and Philistia. They shall possess the Ephraimite country in the district of Samaria, and Benjamin along with Gilead, and that exiled forces of Israelites shall possess what belongs to the Phoenicians in as far as Zephrah, while the Jerusalemites, exile community of Sebhard, shall possess the towns of the Neg, for liberators shall march up on Mount Zion to wreak judgment on Mount Esau, and dominion shall be the Elohim's. So when we take these parts, when we take the South, ain't nothing you Israelites, y'all can moan and cry all you want to, but you not finna change our father's prophecy of what he told the prophet Obadiah. Like some of you, your heart gonna faint and you ain't gonna want nothing to do with trying to get them folks up off our land, that you don't need to be part of the settlement, and how you need to stay in captivity and be destroyed, because when it's time for us to go home, them folks got to leave these parts, and it's non-negotiable. We not finna negotiate with them about our heritage when Almighty Yah start heading us to a settlement. That's non-negotiable. It's non-negotiable. Look, this is Mount Ephraim. These parts where we got to settle. These parts is what you got to settle. That's why I say, when them folks got Tel Aviv, that man, they can be happy, because we ain't coming there to bother them in the northern part. That's theirs. But in the southern parts, it's ours. It's ours. And can't nothing change that. Look, it's Mount Ephraim. Alright, these parts we got to settle. These parts we got to settle. These parts we got to settle. And that's Zephyr, you know what I'm saying? That's on the coast. And can't no Israelite change where we got to settle. All this in the south, man, is considered ours. All of us in the south, in the tribe of Judah's inheritance, is ours, and can't nobody change that. You Israelites are not gonna be able to change it. You're not gonna be able to change where we got to settle. You can moan, cry, and roll over and shed tears all you want to, but it's not gonna change prophecy. It is not gonna change prophecy. But you see, these parts we got to settle, and Almighty Yah making way. That's why, them folks having a hard time with Ashkenazi, because Ashkenazi been used as a tool by the Creator to do some things. And we're gonna have to settle. And it didn't say nothing about driving Ashkenazi out, and that how Ashkenazi gonna dwell in the tents of Shem, like Tanakh say, that we not there to drive them out, and that when we come home, that we gonna only be able to settle in our parts. We're not gonna be able to have the power to drive the other folks out that is not in these parts, because we're gonna only have Almighty Yah supporting us about these parts. Now, some of y'all gonna cry and feel sad and don't want to participate, and I pray that when that time comes, if you don't want to participate and help us get our heritage, that you shouldn't settle in it, that you shouldn't be able to come home after we done did the work of removing them folks out of our land, and them folks gone, and then you come eat a piece of the pie. You don't need to eat a piece of the pie. You don't need to be at the table. And that how that this gonna come to pass soon as Ashkenazi wake up and realize that he cannot defeat these Edomites, and them Edomites taking them down through there now, and it's gonna get worse for them. It's gonna get worse for them, because they can't hold on to our heritage, and they can't go back and recreate prophecy and so forth, and think that they just now that the prophecies are just now being fulfilled. They've been trying to do that and make it seem like the prophecies are just now being fulfilled by them, and that them under the Israelite title, that we can't change that, and we're not trying to change it. We just want to come home and settle our parts that Tanakh say that we have to settle, Ain't nobody gonna be able to change that. So you Israelites might as well get your heart ready, and that that this is gonna take place when Almighty Yah, open the doors, and then we start to head towards the settlement. That's a done deal. That is no change in that. So some of y'all gonna be feeling sad. You ain't gonna wanna participate, and you're gonna be crying and moaning for them folks, and you gonna think, oh, we doing them wrong. No, we not doing them wrong. We got to remember that they come in during the Babylonian Wars and settled our land, and they been there a long time, and they think that the land rightfully belonged to them. But we're gonna show them that it don't. We're going to show them who the real owners of the land is. And it's going to be non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. In that whoever break down and try to help them folks, I pray that Almighty Yah destroy you. That you get destroyed real fast. Because you're not going to be able to change our Father's words that he told Prophet Obadiah. And like I say, that these prophecies didn't come to pass when the exiles come back from Babylon, and how they only lived in a small part of our heritage, and that that they vanished so fast. I got videos going into the exile history, and that they never controlled Edom's territory. They never controlled Edom's territory, and we never had control of Edom's territory. And that how we gets all that, because Edom participated in our destruction. Edom participated in our destruction, and think that they good and cool and so forth, and think that it's all right. And no, it's not all right. When them folks finally realize that we know that we the Israelites, and that we have to come home because they back is against the wall, and there's no way for them to stay in the land, and then they start to bring us home, that, man, all we get is the South, and that we don't bother them, and that we only bother who Almighty Yah say bother. And he don't say bother nobody but the Edomites in the parts, in the peoples that's living in the parts in the South that we got to inherit, and that we have to settle. So that's a done deal. That's a done deal. You Israelites gonna whine and moan. Some of y'all whining and moaning for them folks now that's getting it, that's in the land that we have to settle. But it ain't changing nothing. It ain't changing anything. So you're whining and moaning and feeling sad, and crying for them, and all that is not finna change prophecy. It's not finna change prophecy. So you Israelites better get it in your mind that when we come back, we have to have this land for sovereignty, and that we're not going to be able to worship Almighty Yah and be the nation and peoples that he wants us to be until we settle the land and get rid of them folks. They can't be there when we get our heritage and settle, and that how that we're not going to be able to worship Almighty Yah with the folks with the different religious beliefs that created a religion off of our broken covenant. That's the Abrahamic religions. Ashkenazi trying his best to hold on to them folks and destroy them at the same time. And we see that them folks rising up, giving Ashkenazi a hard time, and that Ashkenazi need to be reduced to the point the way he has no other choice but to bring us home. Some Israelites say, I don't believe that Ashkenazi gonna bring us home, and I don't think, well, who Edom is not gonna bring you there. The Edomites is not gonna bring you home to destroy them and get them off their land. And you best believe they understand Tanakh history, because they had a part of the Jewish community that's infused with Judaism and so forth. These folks, so they not finna help you. They are not finna help you destroy their own kind to get you meant to get themselves up off the land for you. So you can get that out your mind. Some of you Israelites want to collaborate with the Edomites and keep us out of heritage. But I pray Almighty Yah bring your kind to an end, and that you don't be no obstacle for us that's trying to settle, and when we settle, and that you can't be part of our settlement, because we don't need your kind around. For you Israelites that want to help them folks keep our heritage, I pray Almighty Yah bring you to an end when it come time for us to settle, because you don't need to be around. You'll be a harm to us, and we can't worship Almighty Yah with your kind around, so that he bring your kind to an end, or that you don't even come into our heritage when we settle, because some of you Israelites gonna feel sorry for them folks and don't want to do the job that's got to be done, and you got to vanish, because you can't be no obstacle for us. You cannot be an obstacle for us. And some of y'all want to collaborate with the folks that's got our heritage and that want to keep us out of our heritage, and that you cannot be an obstacle, and that you got to vanish, because it can't be y'all winning and then for prophecies not being fulfilled. All right, this is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood.